Hello, my name is Kat, and welcome to Build a Book Episode 2. So, several years ago, I zero drafted the first chapter of this project as an example of what my writing process looks like. Today, I am scrapping that chapter completely and rewriting it. Welcome to my writing process. Over the years of not working actively on this story, I've come up with several big ideas. So there's quite a bit of reimagining that needs to be done, starting with the main characters. When I initially came up with this story idea, I chose some general archetypes to serve as the base for the two main characters. They're twin sisters, but I wanted them to be opposites in some ways. So one of them is an ambitious overachiever, and the other is an indifferent slacker. So that's the trope. That's like the basic dynamic. But tropes aren't characters. So who the hell are these people? Penny is an ambitious overachiever at what exactly? What does being an indifferent slacker look like for Charlie specifically? These generalized traits can manifest in so many different ways. It's like the grumpy sunshine dynamic. There's a million different interpretations of that. And the fun of that trope is not seeing the exact same generic thing again and again. It's seeing different, unique iterations of it. Like, how does this unique grumpy and this unique sunshine contrast and complement each other, right? I kind of defaulted to the stereotype where the overachiever sister is like a polished, serious, uptight perfectionist, and then the slacker sister is a contrast to that. So she's kind of silly and clumsy and quirky. You know, the relatable rom-com heroine archetype. And that would be fine. I do really like writing from a comedic character's point of view, and this book is inherently a little bit silly. Like, her tattoo is haunted. It's so unserious. So Charlie being like the goofy best friend type would work, but often the first idea you have is the most basic. And chances are, if you really think about it, you can come up with something much more interesting. There's your quick writing tip for the day. Throw away your first idea. Not always. This isn't like a hard rule. Sometimes that first idea is like a lightning strike of brilliance. But a lot of the time, the first idea you land on is just the most straightforward. It's like the default, the easiest jump. Whereas making more jumps and brainstorming further options could lead you to something much more interesting. So one thing that I thought would be interesting here is if I flipped the kind of expected serious and silly dynamic. What if I swapped those traits and made it so the overachiever was the silly one and the slacker was the serious one? And that really worked for me. That made the characters click into place. Suddenly, they were way more interesting than those original archetypes that I kind of defaulted to. Now, Penny is not a polished valedictorian type of overachiever. No. She is a mad scientist type. She's an eccentric genius, very driven and passionate. She's an ambitious overachiever, yeah, but she's also a little wacky and unhinged. We're putting the mad scientist, baby. She's a little bit manic. She's a manic pixie dream girl if you dream of electric sheep. There's a whole robotics plot, so that joke is way funnier if you have the context of that, Penny is literally building an android, so anyways, we'll get there. On the flip side, Charlie is very deadpan and impassive. The depressive to Penny's manic. She's generally quiet, but not in a shy way. She's definitely not outgoing, but her indifference sometimes comes off as confidence because she just has huge I don't give a fuck energy. Just an aura of apathy. She does not care what people think about her at all. In fact, she kind of likes provoking reactions in people and pushing buttons. She's a bit of a sarcastic troll. Her lack of ambition is tied to her being kind of nihilistic. Nothing matters. We all die anyways. She would rather be in her room alone, bed rotting on her computer, than literally anywhere else. How's that for a relatable heroine? All she wants to do is sleep, be on computer, eat hot chip and lie. And then, for all of the interesting contrasts between the sisters, they, of course, also have things in common. That's where interesting relationship dynamics happen. That cross-section between their contrasting traits and their complementary traits. Like their star signs. Astrology girlies, let's go! These characters are twins, so they are both Scorpios, which means they are both intense and moody and enigmatic in their own ways. They're both very intelligent, like literal geniuses. Penny uses her brain to do her ambitious science work, and Charlie uses her brain to avoid all work. Both sisters have a certain disregard for the rules. Penny breaks the rules when they get in the way of her pursuit of science, and Charlie just doesn't care at all about following rules. If she can get away with it, then why not? This is going to be a lot of fun when we start investigating the murder. You know how in the show Psych, Sean Spencer will just solve murders by haphazardly doing whatever the hell he wants? He will break a dozen laws and cause at least 3 dramatic scenes in order to solve one crime. Those are the kind of murder mystery shenanigans we're going for here. So yeah, both characters have a certain disregard for the law. Charlie especially. Charlie is a bit of an anarchist, and she's not gonna trust the cops to solve her sister's murder. The whole system is corrupt anyway, so she's just gonna do what she wants. That's the kind of energy she brings. Charlie's whole demeanor is gonna be a lot of fun for me to write, especially when we get to Act 2 and we're meeting all of Penny's peers, the rivals/suspects who are attending the science academy, because I want that whole crew to all be eccentric geniuses. They're all different flavors of mad scientist and wacky in their own ways. And then in the middle of all that is Charlie, who is very deadpan and impassive and utterly unfazed by all the chaos because she grew up with Penny. So she's used to things like explosions at all hours of the night and being on a first name basis with the local firefighters. This is nothing. That explosion was so small, nobody even lost a hand. Chill out. And having the cast all be different variations of a mad scientist is also going to be really fun for the murder mystery investigation because they are all suspicious. I can't tell if that's a quirky habit or a serial killer habit. It could really go either way. And you put a bunch of highly ambitious weirdos in a cutthroat environment like this, of course someone died. Charlie is there for 10 minutes and is immediately yeah, no, I honestly believe every person here is capable of murder. And who hasn't wanted to kill Penny at some point? We've all been there. Penny's we've all what? So now that I actually have a grasp on who these characters are, instead of the default archetypes I was playing around with, we gotta fix chapter 1. In that zero draft, I had Charlie working as a waitress, because that's what I defaulted to. It's like word association. When I think of a miserable, crappy job, my 6-year stint at Applebee's immediately comes to mind. I never really got stress dreams about school, but I did and still do on occasion get stress dreams about working at Applebee's, where I'm the only one on the floor because they cut everyone else to save on labor costs, and I just got octuple sat with big parties and no one is around to help me, and all the customers are getting mad at me and yelling at me, and I'm about to break my streak of not crying at work, which is a real shame because I was at 10 days and that's a new record high. I'm not there anymore. I escaped. I made it out. Serve tables in your 20s, and you can serve tables in your nightmares forever. Anyways, Charlie's personality, now that she actually has one, does not suit the events of that original chapter at all. Charlie is not the type to be friendly and perky in customer service. She's more of an alt girly. She's a goth punk moment of female rage. She'll stop wearing black when they make a darker color. And because of that, I cannot see her working as a server at Applebee's. No. She would snap on like day 3 and quit dramatically. Maybe I'll include something like that. Like just a throwaway line about how she tried working at Applebee's once, but then the incident happened, and now she's not allowed to work customer service jobs ever again. We can have like a little running joke about it, alluding to the incident, but never explaining like what exactly happened. Just making a couple vague references to it, and like each one implies something crazier and crazier went down. That could be fun. I love a good bit. I love a good running gag. Yeah, anyways, enough of chapter 1 is being changed that we're just tossing out what I had and starting over. So that's what we're doing now. Chapter 1, Zero Draft, Take 2. Let's do it. Okay, so chapter 1 is the introduction chapter. We meet our main character, Charlie. We get an idea of her personality and what her life is like in this period of stasis before the inciting incident disrupts everything. Now, we're actually going to keep some of the same beats from the previous Zero Draft attempt. Like, the first beat is still, Charlie wakes up to a throbbing pain in her arm. Her tattoo is hurting, which is weird and unsettling because this is not a new tattoo. It's the tattoo she got with her twin sister. They got matching tattoos on their 18th birthday because they used to be super close. Not only are they twins, but they were best friends too. They did everything together once upon a time until Penny betrayed Charlie, and Charlie went no contact in retaliation. We introduce this mystery of their estrangement. Something happened, but we don't know what exactly went down. They had this huge blowout fight, and now they haven't spoken in a year. You're dead to me, Charlie said the last time they spoke. And then Penny actually does die, and she makes it Charlie's problem. So we have a little Act 1 mystery here, because the murder mystery doesn't come into play until our break into Act 2. So in Act 1, as soon as possible, we want to introduce some kind of mini mystery to serve as an early hook, because the reveal, the answer of what Penny did that was such a betrayal, is interesting enough. I'll tell you all about it later. But if we front load that all in chapter 1, it's not gonna feel as interesting. It's gonna feel like info dumpy backstory. Like, why do I have to read their whole life story before anything happens in this book? Whereas if we gradually reveal pieces of what happened as we go through Act 1, we tease it and allude to it, and like after we've got Penny on page 2, they can talk about it, fight about it. That kind of thing tends to be more engaging. You know, we get this mystery, this question on page 1 of why are these twin sisters who were once so close that they got matching tattoos together, why are they estranged? It makes us want to keep reading to find out. We'll get the answer in a couple chapters. For now, we just get the mystery. Moving on to our next beat. Here we are introduced to Charlie's daily life, which kinda sucks. This is the stasis. We want to establish the status quo before the inciting incident disrupts everything. Now, in the original draft, Charlie lived with her ex-boyfriend, so it was like an emotionally sucky living situation. And my first inclination was to keep that mostly. I wanted to keep the same framework of this chapter. Like, the character of Charlie has been recast, but we're still hitting all the same points. She's going through the same events, the same actions. It's just that her reactions and personality are way different now. But the more I considered Charlie's character and like ruminate on who she is as a person, the more I realize she would never be in this situation. Even as indifferent and generally careless as she is, she would not abide by having her freeloader ex still living in her apartment. Like, that just feels super out of character for who she is as a character now. I actually tried to force it to work at first. I was rationalizing it like, oh, she just lets him live there because she's avoiding confrontation. Every time she tries to kick him out, He whines and complains about how he has nowhere to go, and he turns it into this whole exhausting ordeal of an argument, and she's just like, fine, whatever, stay. But even if that were the case at first, Charlie would absolutely just sneakily move out when he wasn't home, just pack up and peace out, avoiding confrontation while also getting the hell away from him. So yeah, homeboy is getting deleted. I was gonna use him in a later chapter, like when the killer makes an attempt on Charlie's life, they were gonna blow up her apartment and he was gonna die to raise the stakes. But setting us up for that situation is not worth the inconsistency in Charlie's character. The ex-boyfriend was kind of a pointless character overall, so he got axed. Now, this beat is more about Charlie's loneliness. Charlie's life is lonely and sad and boring now. She used to be a part of a duo since birth, and now she's not. Her life is so empty and quiet without Penny constantly around. Her sister is loud and manic and a harbinger of chaos, and Charlie is currently in a place where she's convinced herself that she prefers it this way. She's in denial about how much the estrangement is hurting her. She doesn't care that Penny betrayed her. Like, whatever. It doesn't matter. She's fine on her own. She's better than fine, actually, because it's way more peaceful like this, and she doesn't have to constantly clean up Penny's messes anymore. It's good, actually. She chose this. We're gonna keep this beat pretty short because it's not very active, and we just want a quick glimpse of how her life is boring and sad. And like, life isn't terrible, but it's definitely not good either. And Charlie is too apathetic and unmotivated to change her situation. She's the immovable object to Penny's unstoppable force. And without her, Charlie is kind of stuck in her life, sitting alone in this barren, quiet apartment. But she doesn't miss Penny, definitely not. In the next beat, I figured we could still have her go to a cafe, but she doesn't work there. She just goes there to escape the oppressing silence of her apartment. She brings her laptop to set up camp at her favorite coffee shop and get some work done. And we learn a bit about what her job is. I mentioned earlier that Charlie uses her intelligence to be lazy and avoid all work. So we want to see that. We want to get more of a grasp on her personality and who she is. Charlie's job is a work from home, data analysis, data entry type job. But she actually wrote a computer program that does almost all the work for her. She basically just spends an hour to a week reviewing the output to make sure it's accurate. And she makes a very nice amount of money for a very small amount of actual work. And this tells us a lot about her. You know, she's brilliant, but lazy. And it's not exactly the most moral thing to do, not exactly on the up and up, but who's gonna know? Who's gonna know? How are they gonna know? Charlie loves exploiting a good loophole or shortcut. Her family jokes about how her love of loopholes started at conception because her parents agreed on a single pregnancy and then, surprise, it's twins. She loopholed herself into existence. That's a little bit of character backstory I'm gonna try to fit in here, but if it doesn't quite work, I'll squeeze it in somewhere else because I think it's a fun little detail. Next up, I wanted to keep the beat where she kind of gets into a confrontation with someone because I wanted the phone call to come at like an inopportune moment. In the original draft, it was like this bitchy customer who's being rude while Charlie was being all apologetic. In this version, the customer is going off on this poor employee and Charlie intervenes. Like, this overworked barista can't cuss you out without losing her job, but I sure as fuck can. Something to show us who she is as a person. Like, she's too apathetic to improve her own situation, but she will stand up for someone who needs it right in front of her, our reluctant heroine. I think this adds some interesting complexity to her as a character, and we kind of get a sense of her grayish morals. She's not very moral, but she's also not mean or evil. Like, she feels zero guilt over conning her wealthy corporate employer, but then she bravely stands up for the underpaid service worker being mistreated. It's kind of her save the cat moment, right? Save the barista from the Karen. That's how we know she's the hero of the story. Or maybe a bit of an anti-hero, because she stands up for this poor employee, but she doesn't exactly take the high road. Why kill them with kindness when you can kill them with a knife? I think the killer should maybe be a little afraid of Charlie, actually. She's a Scorpio. There's nothing she does better than revenge. And then, of course, the final beat of the chapter, we end with the phone call reveal. Charlie is fighting it out with this woman when her dad calls. She ignores the call at first because she's busy. This bitch isn't gonna cuss herself out. But then dad calls again, and Charlie answers the phone. This woman is screeching in the background about having Charlie arrested or whatever, and Charlie is just totally chill, answering the phone like, hey, what's up? And it's her dad. He immediately sounds really serious and tense, and she's like, what's going on? And he drops that bombshell reveal. It's Penny. She's dead. Dun, dun, dun! And from here, I just continue fleshing out these beats. Much like I said in the previous Zero Draft video, at this stage, my writing is real rough and messy. This is me telling the story to myself. You know, I'm laying rough groundwork and tonal cues and vibes. It's a sketchy blueprint. Typos and grammar do not matter at all in this stage. And I'll do things like switch point of view from first to third in the middle of a paragraph because I haven't settled on a point of view or tense yet. Third person, first person, past, present. I'll decide later. There are definitely pros and cons to my Zero Draft style. Like, yeah, this needs a lot of work, but that first version of the chapter, and this one too for that matter, took me like 20 minutes to draft. So scrapping it entirely doesn't feel like a huge loss. There's no sunk cost fallacy giving me pause. No sense of, oh, I spent so long working on this chapter, I can't just throw the whole thing out. Even if you know it's better for the story to scrap a chapter or a scene and rewrite it from scratch, it can be difficult and it hurts when you have to kill your darlings. That's why I like to kill them before they become darling. No attachments in the Zero Draft stage. Nothing is precious. So I can be completely ruthless about cutting a bitch. Speaking of cutting a bitch, let's do a bit of unpacking with the specifics of what this confrontation with the rude customer looks like. You know, Charlie reluctantly interferes, but how? Specifically. Being specific is key. We don't want to be generic. That is boring and like empty of good story value. We want everything Charlie does to be, at least in some small way, a reflection of her as a character. So let's say this woman who's going off on the barista is saying that she asked for almond milk, and this is clearly cow's milk. How dare you mess up my drink? You've tried to poison me. I'll have you fired. I know the owner. Just raging at this barista who has to stand there and take it because she can't afford to lose this job, and that's how it is working in the food service industry. And then Charlie, genius computer programmer hacker Charlie, interferes in an on-brand way by interrupting and being like, excuse me, hi, sorry, but does that security camera record audio? And they both look at her like, what the fuck? And the barista answers like, oh, I'm not sure. I think it does. It's cool. I can figure it out. Charlie goes back to her computer and types a little bit, you know, hacking montage, I'm in. She pulls up the video feed and is like, yeah, see, it does do audio. And she hits play and replays the clip from 5 minutes ago of this woman ordering her drink. And guess who didn't specify that she wanted almond milk? Yeah, it was her own damn fault that her drink was wrong. And Charlie has just exposed this to everyone. Naturally, this entitled customer doubles down. She gets all red in the face and starts yelling at Charlie, how dare you dox me? Because that's what she thinks doxing is. You've invaded my privacy. I'll have you arrested for this. And Charlie's like, for what? Making you look like a dumb bitch. First of all, not illegal. And second of all, I can't take all the credit. It was a group effort, and you played a vital role. Charlie is kind of a sassy little troll. It's very fun to write. Oh, you know what? Also, I mentioned before that I wanted to do a little running joke about how Charlie's not allowed to work customer service jobs after the incident. So in my mind, I have the idea that I want to add like 3 or 4 very brief mentions of that sprinkled throughout the book when relevant. For the bit, for the running gag. And the first one would totally fit here. When Charlie sees the barista being harassed, she's like, whoa, flashback to when I spent 3 days serving tables at Applebee's before the incident happened and I was fired. So I've been in the barista's shoes before. That actually gives us another angle of motivation for why Charlie intervenes, even though she's generally apathetic. Like, because of personal experience, she hates to see service workers mistreated like that. So she'll step up. She's a hero of the people. So yeah, here is chapter 1, Zero Draft Take 2. But Kat, isn't that just a second draft then? No, it's not. I don't count my drafts like that. This is still very much a zero draft. I mean, look at it. It's so rough. Once I unpack it all and make it readable all the way through, that's what I consider a first draft. And then polishing it up and making it pretty is a second draft. And then third and fourth and on are drafts based on reader feedback. So this is still what I consider draft 0, just attempt to. And it is an improvement over the previous version, if only because Charlie is, I think, a much more interesting character now. Will this be the zero draft groundwork for the next draft? Maybe. I do tend to rewrite my first chapters the most. It usually takes a couple attempts before I get it just right. For now, I am satisfied with this. But if I do come up with a better idea for this first chapter, I am not attached to this. Like, I'll toss this draft too if something better comes along. I will absolutely rewrite this chapter again if I get a good idea for a change. Welcome to my writing process. But yeah, that is gonna do it for this video today. So thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will have another video up soon. So I will see you then. Bye!